the best thing about having one leg is? Your socks never have to match, and you can put your shoes on in half the time. And for you shoe-loving ladies out there, you can buy twice as many shoes because they only take up half the space. I'm here today because of a miracle that happened several years ago. I was born at 28 weeks, weighing in at just over 2 pounds. Now, back in those days, when a baby was born at less than 32 weeks, they were left out on the counter for an hour to see if they survived or not. Of the survival statistics at that time were that 50% of them survived. And of the 50% who survived, 90% would be left brain damaged. There was one more complication. As I was being delivered, my right leg was caught in the cervix and it clamped down on it, causing a loss of circulation and gangrene. I was rushed to the OR at 2 days old at just over 1.5 pounds for emergency surgery, and they weren't expecting me to survive. The OR was really cold, and the only warmth I had was from 2 heated blankets placed on top of me during the surgery. In those days, there were no respirators for premature infants. So what they would do is the nurses would stand by my bedside 24 hours a day, watching my chest rise and fall to make sure I was still breathing. When my chest stopped rising, they would gently tap me to remind me to breathe. I am forever grateful for the dedicated team of doctors and nurses who worked tirelessly around the clock to give me the gift of life. As a child with one leg, I would quickly learn that the world was not a very safe place. A home that should have been a loving and safe, supportive home was not. My parents couldn't bring themselves to accept a defective child. And from the age of 2 and on, welts, fat lips, bruises, and red hand marks across my cheeks were normal. Being grabbed by the shoulders and shaken in anger were normal. Being thrown out the front door and into the snowbank by my raging father in the dead of winter was normal. At 7 years old, I was in the ER getting stitches because my mother, in her rage, had thrown me across my bedroom. You stupid idiot. You're never going to amount to anything. You're going to grow up to be a loser and a failure. You're not a winner. You're a loser. If an employer has a choice between hiring a person with 2 legs or a person with 1 leg, who do you think they're going to hire? You're only half a person with 1 leg. There is no reprieve from the destructive rage, violence, and anger of both parents. When I was 14, my father told me that he and my mother no longer wanted me living with them, and I was sent off to a foster home the next day. By the time I was 18, I would have been in 4 foster homes, and not every foster home was a safe one. When you turned 18, the money stopped coming in, and you were sent out to live on your own. Your foster home was no longer your home, and either were any of the homes that you had been in. And your biological family wasn't a safe home either. You were reorphaned and left on your own to navigate the world around you. That was one of the harsh realities of being in foster care. In my first foster home, I was no longer forced to wear my prosthetic leg, and it was a welcome break from the open stump sores and painfully slow stride. For the first time, I was free to run and move as fast as I wanted to, and that was when I started to soar. For the first 2 weeks of my new school, I sat out of gym class and I sat out on the bench because I just thought that I really couldn't do sports. In fact, I had had that drilled into my head by my phys ed teacher for years, so I just believed it to be true. One day, I took off running in a full sprint across the classroom because I was just going to go talk to a classmate of mine. And the jocks saw that, and from that moment on, they held me accountable, made me get my butt off the bench and get in the game. For the first time in my life, I wasn't picked dead last for teams anymore. I was picked first and second. They were depending on me, and they expected me to help out. So I couldn't give any less than 110% when I was in the game. I did every sport imaginable: high jump, long jump, and those 1-mile endurance races that we all love and remember so much. Baseball was fantastic because the crutches have a really long reach and they're great for stealing bases. Volleyball was played balancing on one foot. Badminton was played with a crutch in one hand and a racket in the other, and I really preferred playing singles because I played so aggressively that I really didn't want to injure my teammate with my racket. I loved football. I tossed a tight spiral, could cut and spin with the crutches, and they were great for blocking. Not surprisingly, the crutches took a beating. There was the crutch held together, the wooden crutch that was severed in half and held together with athletic tape while playing handball so I could finish the game. There was the crutch top that broke off while playing soccer. There was the crutch that completely bent in half, mangled and twisted when I attempted to run down a hill at full tilt. Then there was the toe that got broken on my crutch when, in a flash of inspiration, I attempted to do a roundhouse kick just like Chuck Norris. Now, when it comes to adversity, recovery is a decision. And one of the things that I had learned along the way was that I had been conditioned by the way I had been raised to be drawn to unhealthy relationships because that was a role that I knew how to play. And in a 4-year period, I would escape domestic violence, I would have multiple relocations in search of safe shelter, I would end up homeless in my car, and I would have a 1-year stay at a women's shelter. My car would be hit 5 times in 16 months by distracted drivers, and on the last hit, it would be totaled. I would spend more than a year in rehabilitative therapy to recover from the injuries. I would experience poverty, violent rape, and an attack from a random stranger. One of the things that just made such a difference at that point was one day, well, shortly after that, one of the things that had started happening was I was suddenly on high alert. I was afraid of going out places. I had nightmares and flashbacks that left me exhausted, and the anxiety levels were through the roof. And I would often pace or I'd run out the door just looking for fresh air and just wanting relief from the anxiety. What I didn't know at that time was that I had PTSD, which was later confirmed by a diagnosis. When I researched the statistics on PTSD, I didn't like what I read. I didn't like what I read in terms of the recovery time. Now, I don't believe in statistics, but I do believe in the healing power of God. If God could grant me the miracle of life as an infant, then surely He could grant me the miracle of recovery from the trauma. I just needed to get my power back. I took self-defense classes taught by law enforcement. I was transformed into an assertive, powerful woman with the ability to identify and shut down threats. I ejected toxic people from my life. I surrounded myself with safe people, people who loved me, supported me, and cared about me. One day, I was flipping through a newspaper at a coffee shop when an ad for a 5K race jumped off the pages at me. 5K? I thought. I could do that. I signed up and started training. I completed the race, and towards the end of it, I was blasting past able-bodied competitors. My race time was fast enough to qualify me to compete in more races. I signed up for another race, and I added weight training to my cardio. I became a powerhouse with all the newfound physical strength I now had, and that didn't just impact me physically. It translated to a mental power as well. I added in healthy, whole food to support my training requirements, and I began taking supplements to replace the nutrients that had been depleted from the stress. Adequate sleep to repair and recover became a priority. When it comes to trauma recovery, recovery is a decision. You are either self-constructing or you're self-destructing. One builds up, but the other tears down. Don't give anyone the power or the credit to make your life any less than the best it can be. If you do that, they win. But when you create a fantastic life and you set good things in motion, then you win. Physical activity ups your endorphins and increases serotonin and dopamine, which are your body and brain's feel-good chemicals. Spending time in nature is a natural stress reducer. Exercise activates your brain's pleasure circuits. Eating mini meals every 3 hours keeps your energy and your mood stable. Volunteering gives you a reason to get up in the morning and make a difference for someone who needs it. It was in doing all of these things that something amazing happened. I was no longer experiencing any of the PTSD symptoms. And after 3 years, I was granted a clean bill of health. Ten months after my last car crash, after I had recovered enough to race again, I completed 7 races that year, including a race at minus 42 degrees Celsius with the wind chill. I had to know if I could do it. Then I set a goal that I wanted to complete 100 races by the time I was 50. And this weekend, I'm on race number 16. So there's 9 more years to complete those, but if I can knock them off, we'll go with 150. Every moment, one of the things, the extra challenge that I added on top of the racing was rappelling. The goal was to rappel in a 17-story building for charity over traffic on one of the busiest streets in the city. Fear didn't enter my mind. All I could picture was a scene from a movie where they rappelled fast and smoothly down the side of a building, and that was exactly what I was going to do. The scenery was amazing. I started playing sledge hockey and was quickly put on defense. You know it's been a good game when you're black and blue and red all over. When it comes to hockey, you wear your battle scars proudly. Every moment of every day, we are either talking ourselves into something or we're talking ourselves out of it. And that includes our circumstances. Instead of your brain controlling your thoughts, you get to tell your brain which thoughts to think. Failure doesn't enter my mind because there's no room for it to camp out there. Every time before I have a new fitness competition or a race, I set the targets high. I picture the victory. I picture a strong finish. When it comes to conquering adversity, your goals must be bigger than your circumstances. When you choose to destroy the limits that are holding you back, you can accomplish more than you ever thought possible. My challenge to you today would be, what limits are you going to destroy? Thank you.